Hello everyone, welcome to our class, the Introduction to Philosophical Foundation of Education class. Do you know that in almost every country, there are activists who are always fighting for the social, humanitarian education of our life needs of a better country. In this video, I will show you 10 world's famous activists.
Where would we be today without human rights? While the world is far from perfect, there are people who have made and continue to make a difference. Here is our list of 10 social activists who have impacted the way we live. The United States Congress called Rosa Parks the First Lady of Civil Rights. Rosa Parks famously refused to give up her seat at the front of the bus in a time when Black Americans were made to sit in the back. While she was not the first to disobey the bus seating rule, in violating these segregation laws and fighting the charges in court, she set a precedent for the growing civil rights movement in the United States and became a symbol to all those in hope of greater equality throughout the country. An estimated 50,000 people paid their respects when she passed at the age of 93. Would you spend 27 years in prison for the freedom of your people? Nelson Mandela did just that in taking down the apartheid system of South Africa, where Black South Africans had inferior rights to white South Africans. After his vicious battle and imprisonment, Nelson Mandela emerged as a leader of Africa and of civil rights all across the world. Despite the aggression he was subject to in his life, he said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." While Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, our next member of the list lived only to be 27. Not all forms of protest involve being arrested or shaking up the establishment. Sometimes it's through artistic analysis and statements. Jean-Michel Basquiat was a prodigious painter who eventually made friends with the likes of Andy Warhol. His artwork is characterized by a complex, symbolic narrative of social issues such as race and class inequality. Sadly, he lost the inner battle and overdosed on heroin. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery, escaped, and would go on to be part of one of the largest operations to dismantle and undermine the institution of slavery in the American South. Nicknamed Moses because she never lost a passenger, Harriet Tubman successfully led many Black American slaves to their freedom on the secret tracks of the Underground Railroad, a network of safe houses by people who wished to abolish slavery. In her later years, Tubman was also a women's suffrage activist, further cementing her as one of the great humanitarians. Considered by some to be the godfather of hip-hop, Gil Scott-Heron's lyrics would conjure social issues in his cool, jazzy spoken-word poetry. His sophisticated lyrics and speech-like delivery over instrumentals would have a big impact on the music industry, influencing the style and messages of hip-hop. At a time when a lot of rebel music was angry, his lyrics were relaxed and satirical. And while many artists have cited him as an influence for rap, he preferred to call himself a bluesologist. Joan Baez started her music career with the likes of Bob Dylan, singing protest songs about the state of the country. She has been performing for over 55 years in the name of the environment, LGBT rights, racial rights, peace, etc. You name it, she has stood up for it and sung about it. Can you imagine being arrested for trying to vote? Susan B. Anthony played a pivotal role in the history of women's rights. After being arrested for casting a vote and after refusing to pay the fine, she took the issue of women's suffrage across the country to convince people it was time for women's voices to be heard. It was not easy. Her early years were fraught with ridicule, and it was only later that she began to receive her deserved accolades. She is a shining example of doing the right thing in the face of adversity. Though politics and gay activism were not initially on his mind, as the times changed in the 1960s, Harvey Milk began to understand the importance in fighting for the respect of the LGBT community. Being the first openly gay politician was no doubt an influential move in and of itself, and he would use his influence to pass laws allowing more rights for gay people, setting the precedent for people's right of sexuality today. There is no more controversial figure on this list than Malcolm X. One of the most prominent civil rights activists of all time, Malcolm Little, his birth name, had a directionless start. He was gambling, pimping, prostituting himself, and generally leading an empty life until a stint in prison opened his eyes to the power of words. He became a voracious reader, converted to Islam and began to preach and protest against the racism of white America. His aggressive, even violent stances toward progress have made him a figure of contention, seemingly being a love him or hate him type of character. Regardless, he was a compelling speaker, and his defiance cost him his life as he was shot to death. Considered the alternative to Malcolm X and perhaps the most famous activist on our list, or at least the most quoted, everyone knows Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Had a Dream speech. He had a rough childhood due to the racial tensions in the southern United States and due to the intensity of his father, whose torch he would later bear. When Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on the bus, King rose to her defense and gained national prominence in helping eliminate bus segregation laws. He would go on to march on Washington and peacefully protest the treatment of black folks in America. He was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. These great men and women's legacies live on through the daily comforts and freedoms we're afforded. We should take care in not squandering what these people stood for, by learning to appreciate each other and hold each other up in times of need instead of submitting to fear and ignorance. If you think about it, no matter what happens, we're all in this together.
After watching the video, do you agree if our school will also be changed in a group of activists? Do you agree if the curriculum has been changed in theory or practice to make students become social activists and fight for the interest of social humanity, education, and better life? I want you to create a group of discussion and discussing this question. Give some reason if you agree, and also give another reason if you disagree. Okay, I'm very happy to see the excellent response to this question. In a previous class, we discussed about pragmatism, a philosophy that also plays a role and influence to the philosophy of education. In our class today, we have 3 learning objectives. First, after this class today, students are able to describe the influence of Reconstruction philosophy in education. Second, students can evaluate the implication of the philosophy to aim at education, teaching methods, and various curricular methods. And third, students will try to make critique for the Reconstruction philosophy in light of the Bible and Adventist philosophy of education. Alright, philosophy has various relationships in all aspects of life, including in education. Philosophy, seen from its function, is as a means for humans to be able to solve the life problem they face, including with problems in the world of education. In other words, philosophy is the direction, guidelines, and also the basis for achievement of the implementation and objectives of education. Reconstruction comes from English, namely reconstruct, which means to rebuild and to overhaul the old order and change it to a new life pattern. Plato is one of the founder of Reconstructionism. He outlined a plan for a condition under which education would become a material for forming a new and better society. Plato was convinced that this condition was very desirable by the public. And Karl Marx is also one of the figures of the Reconstructionism that describes the changing world based on the flow of international communism. If we look at Plato's thought up to the Skinner, we can know that they recommend education as primary tool for social change. Plato, for example, taught about education as a sine qua non of a good society. And then Marx sees education as a way to help the proletariat develop an understanding of social conscience. In the United States, some people view education as a tool for social reform. One of the characters, his name is John Dewey. John Dewey views education as a tool for both humanitarian and social change. The philosophy of pragmatism, which Dewey thought was connected with the rejection of absolute things and accepting things of a relative nature only. Modern reconstruction is basically the flow of pragmatism, philosophy, and homage to Dewey thoughts. Okay, once again, I want you to discuss back in your group. You may looking some reference or from anywhere in the book or internet about the influence of the Reconstruction philosophy in education. I give you 15 minutes to brainstorm how the influence of the Reconstruction philosophy in education. Well, it was great to see the brainstorming that happened. The conclusion and discourse that had been delivered were so interesting. Let's continue this lesson. The most striking characteristic of educators who believe in reconciliation is their view that modern society still facing a crisis for survival, and schools are strategically positioned to face the crisis and provide a strong foundation for survival. This philosophy, Reconstructionism, also believes that the effort to save the world is the duty of all human beings. So that with the right guidance in the work of education and re-establishment of intellectual and spiritual power, rebuilding people with the right values and norms, so that a new world is formed that is convinced that it will save the world. Reconstructionism considers if the school is an agent of change, which not only transfer knowledge but also teach values in life and rebuilds or reconstructs the values optimally, so that there arises more effective ways of thinking and more effective ways of working, so as to make a better world from the past. It might even be better in the present. Work community, brotherhood, and democracy are the three ideas that are believed by Reconstructionists and are willing to apply in school and society. Schools should place this thought through curriculum, administration, and learning. When school cannot be expected to reconstruct or change society on their own, Reconstructionists can act as model for society by adapting that thinking. Alright, now let's see what influenced the Reconstruction philosophy in the curriculum, teachers, or learning methods, and so on. The purpose of education must be completely changed again with the aim of finding needs related to the current cultural crisis and to adjusting the needs with social science. So the goal of Reconstructionism in education is to raise student awareness of the social, economic, and political problems facing humanity in a global scale and teach them the skill needed to overcome this problem. How about curriculum? The curriculum is the core of education field and has an influence on all educational activities. The curriculum, according to Reconstructionism, the curriculum must contain subjects that are oriented to the future needs of society. Curriculum organizational structure is formed from branches of social science and scientific inquiry process as a method of problem solving. Learner, the flow of Reconstructionism believes that the task of saving the world is the duty of all human beings or nation. So Reconstructionism enhances education that awakens the ability of students to constructively adapt to the demand of change and development of society as a result of science and technology, so that students remain in a free atmosphere. How about educators? Teachers. In the reconstruction task of the teacher is to provide awareness to students of the problem faced, help students to be able to solve the problems they face well. Schools are the main agent for social, political, economic change in society. Teachers must be skilled in helping students deal with controversy and change. Teachers. In the reconstruction task of the teacher is to provide awareness to students of the problem faced, help students to be able to solve the problems they face well. Schools are the main agent for social, political, economic change in society. Teachers must be skilled in helping students deal with controversy and change. So in the reconstruction of the teacher, for the teacher is to provide awareness to the students of the problem faced, help students to be able to solve problems they face. Let's see the educational method. The teacher tries to help students. Reconstructionism believes that the teacher will try to help students find their interests and needs in accordance with the interest of its students, both in plenary or group activities. They are trying to solve social problems faced together. Okay? As students in Adventist school or educators who are running SDA Adventist school, what is our view for this philosophy? Is this same with the philosophy of educational or of Adventist education? Is this acceptable? Please give your criticism. Please give your critique of this philosophy regarding of the philosophy of Adventist education. Has there been an influence so far in Adventist education? Please discuss again and present the answer again as a project in the next meeting. Alright, I know that education imparts more than academic knowledge. It fosters a balanced development of the whole person spiritually, intellectually, physically, and social as a holistic concept. As an Adventist educator, I believe that the aim of education is to restore human beings into the image of their Maker. So the Christian teacher function in the classroom as God's minister is the plan of redemption. Yes, we are agents of change. I know that I agree with Reconstructionism that we are agents of change, but not just the social agent, but overall in order to restore image of God as when human created in Genesis 1 verse 27. All curricular learning methods, student and teacher must become a unity to make the school not as a tool for social only, but holistic change. Okay, that's all about the philosophy of Reconstructionism in education and how it affects to school. Next meeting, we will discuss another theory of educational philosophy that is more interesting, namely behaviorism in education. See you in the next class. May the Lord bless you.